Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I hope you're enjoying your breakfast this morning. My name is Amanda Izquierdo. I am a dietitian with Fresh Avocados Love One Today, which is part of the Hass Avocado Board, or HAB, as we like to call it. Love One Today and our Spanish companion, Aguacates Frescos Saborea Uno Hoy, are leading sources of the healthiest reasons and tastiest ways to enjoy fresh avocados. As HAB's science-based resources, they provide turnkey solutions for you as health professionals to stay on top of the latest avocado nutrition research and confidently recommend avocados. Saborea Uno Hoy is designed for the Hispanic and Latino audiences, providing culturally inspired recipes, tips, and handouts in Spanish. Be sure to check out our websites, loveonetoday.com, move it here, and saboreaunohoy.com for recipes, some of which you're enjoying today. The avocado smoothie shooter, the crema with the grits, and the avocado muffin are on our website. So you can find recipes on our websites, patient resources, research overviews, complimentary CEUs, and much more. Today we'll discuss research, some of which is supported by the Avocado Nutrition Center, which is HAB's research arm and the world's only independent resource for comprehensive avocado nutrition research. The ANC focuses on growing the body of knowledge about how eating fresh avocados can contribute to human health, specifically how their nutrients can help manage type 2 diabetes, support weight management, promote heart health, and healthy living at any age. Without the Avocado Nutrition Center, the vast majority of research into the avocado as a whole food wouldn't exist. So 2 quick announcements before we get started. First, don't forget to enter for a chance to win a 3-month supply of fresh avocados. So there's QR codes on the tables out in front as well. If you scan the QR code, you sign up for our bi-monthly health professional email, and we'll be entered for a chance to win. There'll be 3 winners selected later today. And secondly, if you lean to your left and look at the rung right under your chair, if you have a little sticky note, come find us in the front at the end of the session. We have a little prize for being here today. So it's just a really small flag sticky note. If anyone has one, maybe hang on to it. Yeah, awesome. So come find us in the front at the end, and we'll give you a little prize for being here. So with that, I am thrilled to turn things over to our speaker this morning, Dr. Wendy Bazilian, a writer, educator, food enthusiast, and award-winning journalist. Wendy is a doctorate in public health and nutrition, a registered dietitian nutritionist, and an American College of Sports Medicine certified exercise physiologist. Wendy has authored several books and has contributed to a number of others. She maintains a busy private practice in San Diego with individuals from CEOs, artists, and actors to professional athletes, parents, and children seeking to improve their nutrition, fitness, and health. Wendy is an advisor and frequent contributor to a variety of national media outlets, including NBC's Today and GMA. She has served as the nutrition expert on Live with Kelly and Company, now Mark, for the past 13 years. Wendy is also on the board of directors for the California Academy Foundation as an active advocate for students and others pursuing scholarships, fellowships, research and educational grants, paid internships, and mentorship. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Wendy Bazilian.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. First of all, I recognize some familiar faces, and that's the great thing about a conference. We get to engage over days in many ways, and I see some people who attended our session on Sunday as well about presenting well, so hopefully I do us justice today. I am delighted and thrilled to be here with you. These are my disclosures for today. And thank you so much to Amanda for the warm welcome, and to our sponsor, Fresh Avocados, Love One Today, Saborea Uno Hoy, for inviting me to speak and entertain some of the things that I want to bring to you today, in addition to sharing some of the latest research and hopefully putting it all together in a way that's practical and bring it home for you, your clients, your patients, and your practices in whatever capacity that you operate as a health professional. Our learning objectives. Over the course of our time together, of course, to get our continuing education credit and to accomplish some very specific objectives, here they are. But I've framed them up, I think, in a different way here, that we will accomplish them through this, which is our menu for today. This is our roadmap of sorts. As RDNs, as health professionals, working in the nutrition field, it's easy to dismiss many of the nutrition claims and conversations of social media. And we've had several sessions that sort of helped us to figure out and navigate, when to engage, how to engage, what format we might engage in. But we have an opportunity, almost a responsibility, to interface with our clients when they bring us those kinds of claims. And they bring us things that on first glance might seem, outlandish, or we might sort of chuckle in the back of our minds. They're coming to us caring about nutrition enough to say that out loud. And so I think it's important, and over the course of the time, we're going to talk about just a few of those in the context of cardiovascular health that we're seeing. And likely there's others that you've seen as well, so I invite you to participate in that. We're also going to be looking at some of the current research and recommendations related to nutrition and cardiovascular risk in particular. So this session is about sustainable behavior change for cardiovascular health. So I want to be sure that, it's nice to, get up to speed again on, what are the statistics? Let's look at a little research. Let's look at some key areas that we might tap into our clients and private practices and our consumer audiences where we can make impact on their behavior. And then what can we do as RDNs and nutrition professionals? How do we navigate these conversations? So we'll come back full circle, and I'll give you hopefully what is a fun way to think about some, not marching orders, but a framework to think about how you can discuss some of this together and in a memorable way that has impact. So before we get into the scientific evidence and practical applications, I want to ground ourselves in some things that we and our clients are seeing on social media as it relates to nutrition, eating behaviors, and heart health. So for any of you who have attended our session the other day, this slide is a busy slide. This is too much information, but I did this on purpose. This is buzzy also. Here's some of the headlines. This is a sampling of the conversations that are loading our minds. I think of it like tangled hangers. Have you ever had the tangled hangers and you're like trying to untease them, or tangled necklaces that you're trying to get your safety pin out and tease those apart? This is what is entering our minds. This doesn't even begin to touch the surface of nutrition-related information we're seeing on social media, but these are topics of relevancy to heart health, which is our focus today, and I'm going to touch on some of them. Seed oils. Have some of you seen some of the headlines about seed oils? That they're toxic, and we've even talked about, and they've been brought up in several of the talks during today's Dietitian. The carnivore diet. Greens powders, certainly not new, but it's been re-emerging again, this discussion about greens powders. And then another one I wanted to bring up that's very recent, but I've been getting a lot of hits on this, is storing avocados in water, this sort of hack for storage. Have any of you been seeing these, any four of these? Raise of hands? Yeah, universally. Anything else that you've been seeing, or that a client or someone's brought to you, to your attention, that they've been hearing that's gone viral, or just curious? Yes. Did you have one?
Still, intermittent fasting is still being
You bring up intermittent fasting, yeah. Intermittent fasting, and is it legit, and should I be doing it? Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that as well. Well, today we're going to focus specifically on heart health, and it is something that we want to be able to help clear up some of the misunderstanding and the misinformation. We want to help navigate these spaces and the communication with our clients. So let's take a moment to review what we know about cardiovascular health in the US. Some of the latest statistics. I always like when I'm at a fresh conference and it's like Can you land me in the most recent stats so I can just refer to them real quick and I don't have to go digging for them? So they're here in your deck. You'll have the handout. You have all the latest statistics here, but also some of the places, opportunities where we can help our patients and clients improve their health and outcomes. First, a stark reminder, heart disease has been the leading cause of death in the United States since 1950. Around the world, it's the #1 killer, but I mean, think about that. Since 1950, no change. Prior to 1945, cardiovascular disease was not a major contributor. In fact, infectious disease it was a major cause of death. Those who studied history, that is, of course. That it was a major cause of death. And the calorie-rich diet was actually beneficial for illness recovery at that time. So imagine a time when we're encouraging calorie-rich diets to help with injury and illness. For context, the other leading causes of death based on the CDC's latest data, which is 2021 data, but it's the latest data that's right up there today, checked it yesterday. Heart disease, cancer, COVID-19, a sign of the times, and accidents, #4, just so that you're framed up in that. As we look at factors related to cardiovascular health, I'd like to briefly touch on and acknowledge the Essential 8 from the American Heart Association. Have some of you heard about the Essential 8? Yeah, it's a tool, it's a resource, it's one of several things out there. It came out last June from the American Heart Association. It replaced the Simple 7 because it added sleep. It updated the body of science from a decade ago. And the Essential 8 are health behaviors and health factors. For health behaviors, eating better, being more active, quitting tobacco, getting healthy sleep, which is the new one. And then health factors like managing weight, controlling cholesterol, managing blood sugar, and managing blood pressure. You note that many of them have an interrelationship with diet and exercise and sleep. Today we're going to focus primarily on diet and cardiovascular disease, but I wanted to acknowledge, certainly give nod to the fact that lifestyle, overarching lifestyle behaviors and factors play a role in cardiovascular health and risk reduction. So the American Heart Association, in conjunction with the National Institutes of Health, every year releases their heart disease and stroke statistics. I should be able to get that word out. Statistics. This February was the latest report. And the annual report works and derives that from a number of surveys and data points year after year. The latest report, and I'd like to highlight a few points, about half of adults, just over half, are meeting physical activity recommendations. I like to be half full thinking about that, so about a little over half of us are meeting physical activity recommendations. I'll let you do the math on other. About a quarter of us have elevated LDL, and about 1 in 5 have high triglyceride levels. When we look at efforts toward prevention, we know increasingly sleep is important, about that magical 7 to 9 hours a night, and about 33% of adults are getting insufficient sleep. The numbers are much higher for people who are having disturbed sleep on a weekly basis at some point, but about 33%, about a third of us having insufficient sleep regularly. And we do know some things. Increased fruits and vegetables, about 5 servings a day. There's been some research over the years that has pushed it up 7 to 9, 9 to 14 servings if you look at certain research. But we're sort of back at almost 5 a day. I'm not going to use that as a slogan, but 5 servings of fruits and vegetables distributed, as many of you know, have an important role and are protective against cardiovascular disease and risk factors, reducing risk factors, as well as the unsaturated fats, the MUFAs and the PUFAs, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. So as RDNs and health professionals in the area of nutrition practicing, we know this. We know that increased diet quality is important. And we know that diet quality can play a role in decreased risk of certain chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease and the risk factors associated with it. But where should we focus our time and our clients' time to greatest impact? How can we actually make strides and make behavior change? What practices, what nuggets of wisdom will they actually take home to their homes and pantries and families and put on the table? And what is dietary quality? How do we measure that? The ways to measure and the numbers do vary some, but we definitely know that an increase in diet quality achieved through a healthy eating pattern, not just single foods, can help reduce the risk of cardiovascular risk factors and cardiovascular disease overall. So we'll keep that into perspective. Another wonderfully populated slide for you, but what I'm doing here is actually showing you that there are various dietary patterns that have been suggested and recommended for being heart healthy, to support cardiovascular health from various health organizations. While there's modest differences that will go between the two, so you can zoom in when you get your handout and take a look at that, there is pretty good consensus that a diet abundant in what? Vegetables and fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, lower in some of the things, the lower ends like the added sugars and added sodium are pretty unanimous, pretty universal across them. Since we're focusing on cardiovascular health today, I want to point out that the American Heart Association eating pattern, the oil consumption is much higher at 45 grams a day versus 27 grams a day in the different dietary patterns from the dietary guidelines for Americans. So there are some varieties. Research from the DGAC reports have consistently shown also that this might address the intermittent fasting question just a little bit, that when we eat more meals in a day, we get more diet quality in general if you're focusing on healthy food. So more in number, like 3 meals over 2, there's a chance for getting more nutrition. So I'm not here to say 2 meals is better than 3 meals, or 3 meals is better than 2, or you do 3 meals and 2 snacks, or skip it until this time. But I am saying that the more times that we eat, if you're focusing on healthy food, the better chances that you get nutrition in there, and there's research that has borne that out. So we eat patterns, and just reflecting that again. You've seen this number before. This is the Healthy Eating Index. I expect you've seen this before. And it looks pretty miserable on paper. 58, it feels like a failure. Oh my gosh, the American diet, we are failing. But I want to put this into context. This index is on a scale of 100, and it measures foods that have positive influence that you want more of in the diet, beside foods that you want less in, and it scores up to 100. A minimum of 80 is what's considered to be good diet quality. So minimum of 80. So if we do our math, if you go back to your algebra and you do your math on the percentage there, we are a solid C in terms of our grade there. Huge room for improvement, but at least we're not failing. So I want to highlight the positive again. Important to do that. When you see that 58, we do need to have a context. And what does his index mean? It's real easy to say we are just failing. A lot of room for improvement, solid C. The question we want to ask ourselves, though, is, how do we make some of these improvements, and what are we seeing when we look at the diet quality? We see that youngest children have the highest overall diet quality due to significantly greater scores for fruit, whole fruit, dairy, and whole grains. And then it sort of goes down into adulthood. Total fruit intake, as I mentioned, goes up between 2 and 18 years of life and then drops off. There's certainly room for improvement in our greens and beans and whole grains, which suggests that we can improve on fiber. And we know, the stat is sitting right there in the dietary guidelines, that 90% of women and 97% of men do not meet the recommended intakes of fiber. 5% on average are meeting our daily recommendations for fiber. 5, that's shocking. Dairy intake spikes during childhood, likely due to increased focus on calcium and growth and development. We're doing okay on protein. We'll get back to protein later. Protein always has this sort of called the Shirley Temple effect, like the lure of it's so adorable, we just want more of it. I don't know where I got the Shirley Temple connection, but I think she's just so adorable. So I think of protein and Shirley Temple. Who knows? And when it comes to dietary, maybe you will now too. And when it comes to dietary fat, the intake of beneficial fats decreases during childhood and then goes back up slightly. But it's a score out of 10, so we're still fairly low on getting the beneficial fats. So looking at opportunities for improvement and impact on cardiovascular health, we can identify some key ones, and this is what was really fun to think about. How are we going to frame up today, and what can I bring home? And there's a couple tools. One is the 3 Fs, 3 buckets that may seem obvious, but it's 3 Fs. So fruits and vegetables as a category, fat, and we'll talk about that in more detail, and fiber. how can we focus on some simple buckets, and then how can we apply that when we're talking to our clients, when talking about heart health, cardiovascular risk reduction, and health overall. Fruits and vegetables and more plants generally. We just saw that there are opportunities to improve. You know, I said the 5% statistic on fiber. We've heard this many times. This room knows this stat. You could recite it like together. I could say 1, 2, 3. But 1 in 10 of us is getting enough fruits and vegetables. 90% are falling short on the fruit and vegetable recommendations on a day. Less than half are meeting our recommendations for plant proteins, and we'll look at that a little bit. Only 2% are meeting the recommendations for whole grains, and that's make half of our grains whole. So we have lots of opportunities, you know. We have lots of work to do. This is awesome that we're sitting here today. Lots of work to go home and do. Fat, primarily these days, and we'll look at the research, how it's evolved, which I think is really cool, the evolution of science, that primarily focusing on the unsaturated fats in place of some of the saturated fats. So it's not as simple like more of this, less of this, more of this, less of this, or cut this out. It's more like what's the overall diet quality and the reflection of swaps and changes we can make, and then fiber. And by upping our fruit and vegetable and plant food intake in general, we can start bumping up the fiber, but how do we inevitably increase it that way, and how do we meet it in other strategic ways? So let's look at these 3 buckets. I'm going to show you some recent evidence and sort of the overarching picture here. I'll dive into some of them as a build-up on how we can address some of the misinformation and misunderstanding and those claims that I showed at the beginning when we come back around. So when we look at the evidence for fruits and vegetables and plants generally, a number of meta-analyses and systematic reviews exploring the relationship between fruit and vegetable intake and risk of cardiovascular disease, related mortality, and all-cause mortality have generally supported that current recommendations are to consume more vegetables, more fruit, and plant foods for cardiovascular health. On the screen here, I have 3 publications that demonstrate the breadth and depth of the evidence on the topic of fruits and vegetables and plant foods. It's deep and wide. The study publications here, 2017, 2021, 2022, they cover, these are meta-analyses and systematic reviews, and they cover research spanning 1992 to 2019. So sometimes I'll hear people approach me and say, you know, but that's old research. Sometimes it's the body of research that shares what the story is. And consistently over time, it's important to look at seminal studies, landmark studies, the studies overall. And consistently over time, when we look at these papers and they're reviewed and they're chewed up and digested and chopped up by statistics and looked at, we see this relationship between fruit and vegetable and plant foods and cardiovascular health. So this is where sometimes the value of the type of study, where we poke holes in the limitations, and we're quick to do that, where the strengths of certain kinds of studies really emerge. The first study included 95 studies, 142 publications that came out of them. The second, and I won't give you the big numbers of how many participants, I'm just giving you the breadth and depth in little sound bites. The second was 32 prospective cohort studies and 31 in the meta-analyses. And the third paper included outcomes over nearly 3 decades through the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, as well as 26 prospective studies. So these are like deep dives into the research with a lot of criteria and markers to evaluate them. Of course, we all know, and so I will state the limitations, and you'll hear me do this consistently throughout our talk today. These are all meta-analyses, which rely on published work. And this work presents unique limitations. The type of research always has limitations. And the findings cannot be generalized to you, the population. We can talk about these in important broad strokes, and then we can apply them on a population basis and translate them carefully with guardrails. These studies, however, do provide support for recommendations to consume more fruits and vegetables and plant-based foods. Since we're talking about behavior changes today, I wanted to include one more study here in this section because of what it sought to measure as well as its findings. This is the power of habit. Like, can simple changes that many of us promote, small steps yield big results? The power of a healthy habit. In this case, an appealing one, having an avocado added a day. Like, do what you want, but add an avocado a day, and the impact on health. This is a clear example of what a simple practice, a simple shift can do. In the most extensive clinical trial of its kind called the Habitual Diet and Avocado Trial, this was supported by the Avocado Nutrition Center. I will mention that in the studies that I report if that's the case. Researchers at 4 clinical centers looked at the impact of consuming 1 fresh avocado a day for 6 months on weight, on waist circumference, and on certain risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Despite the additional calories, it did not impact the visceral, the deep body fat, body weight, or fat in the liver, which of course we know is the organ of metabolism for so many of our nutrients, compared to the control group that was not consuming the avocado. And when it came to cardiovascular risk factors, it made modest but significant reductions in total and LDL cholesterol and improved diet quality compared to the control group. So again, when we rise the diet quality, remember, overall, we're improving diet and probably other chronic disease risk factors as well. So what this study does, it shows that a nutrient-dense food that's high in fat, still resulted in important beneficial clinical outcomes. It also supports the overall growing body of research on fruit and vegetable consumption and plant-based foods for cardiovascular health. And it also speaks to the power of habit, an easy and delicious change that you can sort of, initiate with your clients, and that can be done. Again, the findings here cannot be generalized to the larger population, but it supports the body of evidence for increased fruit and vegetable consumption and cardiovascular health. Bucket number 2, dietary fat. Today, published research supports recommending oils in the unsaturated fats and limiting the saturated fats. We're still hearing that. That's still part of the recommendation, and I'm going to give a mention of saturated fat here in a couple minutes and the evolving research there. What I wanted to do here was provide you a timeline, because I think this is an evolution story. I mean, we know this a little bit, but it's really nice to have it like land on a page again and see time right before your eyes. Nutrition science and dietary fat recommendations have evolved, and the role of saturated fats' effect on cardiovascular disease started to come to light with a couple seminal publications in the early 50s. The 50s was sort of like that turning point when, all of a sudden the category of fat was bad. The relationship between cholesterol sort of emerged. Heart disease became the leading cause of death. All of these things started happening in the 1950s. 1980, we are eating low fat, and we don't need to name any foods to know exactly what era that was. The low fat diet was, that's the way you eat for cardiovascular health. Did we have it wrong? We had it wrong, but I think the science just hadn't borne out on we hadn't teased out all the nuggets. I don't think scientists were dumb then, or they were trying to dupe us. Maybe some of the interpretation or marketing was looser on the subject, but the science was evolving. So we were starting to tease out, well, what's happening here? Oh, there's hundreds of types of fats in major categories. Oh, maybe we should look into that. Oh, maybe we should put it back in the food. Maybe it's just not the fat itself. Maybe it's the matrix, which you're going to be hearing more about not only here, but in time to come. In 2010, in the addition of the dietary guidelines, it was the first time we saw oils and unsaturated fats recommended in the place of solid fats and saturated fats. 2010, that wasn't that long ago. 2010, that was 13 years ago. I remember that. But to think that was the first time that unsaturated fats and oils were mentioned in our dietary guidelines for Americans. However, it wasn't until the 2020 dietary guidelines, remember those? Yeah, we're in them. We're in them right now. There was no limit on total fat, just for saturated fat. So the evidence continues to evolve with the emerging evidence indicating, even now that saturated fat, such as dairy foods like whole milk, may not be as strongly associated with cardiovascular risk as once thought. That in fact, nutrient-dense sources of saturated fats and the different types of fats in different foods may reflect differently when it comes to cardiovascular health. So stay tuned on that. This is not the purpose of today's lecture, but the matrix of the food, in addition to the type of fat, may have an impact, neutral, negative, positive, on cardiovascular risk. So research has come a long way, as we mentioned, since the 1950s. It takes many, many studies piggybacking on each other, teasing them out to ground us in enough science to make recommendations and sound dietary choices. In 2010, the first review there you see on the left, a systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized control trials was published, providing evidence that consuming PUFAs in place of saturated fats. I literally remember this study coming out, That's why I bring it up in 2010. This is, sometimes you bring up older studies because they were seminal. They're landmark. It's not because that's what I could find when I was doing my PubMed search. This was a really important, and this was Dariush Mozaffarian and crew. And I remember it was the first time when it said, maybe it's not just reducing saturated fats. In fact, study after study is suggesting that we need to swap in unsaturated fat sources, monounsaturated and polys, for the saturated fats to make this beneficial impact on cardiovascular health. And then there's been study after study since then. And it's changed the tone of that conversation altogether, and it started in 2010. Study number 2 in the middle there, a prospective cohort study that is published in 2015, indicated that unsaturated fats, especially the PUFAs, and high-quality carbohydrates should replace dietary saturated fats to reduce cardiovascular or coronary heart disease risk. This was over 120,000 adult sample size and over 7,000 incident cases of coronary heart disease. And in 2018, many of you will remember the Predimed study that still continues to publish, one of the longest free-living randomized control trials in the history of nutrition science. Predimed, the Prevención con Dieta Mediterránea, a multi-center randomized control trial, showed that a diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil, which by the way was a liter a week, yeah, that's a lot, in a great way, it borne great results, and nuts as the other arm versus a reduced fat diet resulted in lower major cardiovascular events in an at-risk population. So saying that the high-fat sources, the Mediterranean diet, actually reduced cardiovascular risk factors in so many ways that they stopped the trial early because it was so compelling that it was irresponsible to continue with the other dietary approach. What about saturated fat? I like to say, fat, what's up with that? I'll take that, I don't know where. We're still paying attention to saturated fat. People are still scared of it. It's definitely recommended to advise to reduce or to replace in our dietary guidelines. But there are many types of saturated fat. And I want you to remember this, that like when we're talking about foods, we tend to pigeonhole them for the sake of like the prominent fat that we're looking at. A lot of foods have multiple types, and we're just stating the prominent type of fat. Even in, in olive oil, it's got a distribution of fat across it. But there are many types of saturated fats, and there's many primary types of saturated fats. And we're recognizing, and evidence is starting to show that the whole food matrix and the source of dietary saturated fat may make a difference on the impact on cardiovascular health. I'm going to stop there today, but just like keep your ears alert to that. And so when people, flat out say, saturated fat is bad, say, let's explore that a little bit further. Or if you want some more resources and information, I'm happy to connect after. And the recommendations may evolve, so stay tuned. Our third little category here, fiber. Incredibly, we've known about fiber and cardiovascular health for a long time, have we not? Cardiovascular health, reduction of cholesterol, a high fiber diet. We even recognize and know that's like one of the biochem mechanisms we can understand. It's like, oh, that's soluble fiber. It sequesters the cholesterol in the gut. It helps push it out. We can say that. We know that, and there's a lot of evidence. We know that dietary fiber intake is linked to cardiovascular health, helping modulate cholesterol. But we also know that fiber helps modulate the microbiota. And oh my, are we discovering new things about that every single day. So here, I want to put some caveats and limitations on this. We're exploring. This is exploring. But the idea that whether, how, and what to what degree the gut microbiota is associated with cardiovascular disease risk. This is an area of exploration right now in research. More research is needed to understand how the gut microbiota communicates with other organs and the tissues in the body that could inform our cardiovascular disease profile as well as therapy. Therapy is associated. So in the research, one is about hypertension, so that I'm sharing here. Increasing fiber reduces hypertension, so this is direct, indirect risk factors, but a study looking at sort of the traditional, we know about cholesterol, but this is one about reducing systolic and diastolic blood pressure to statistically significant, and improvements on fasting blood glucose and LDL cholesterol in the first study. It was a meta-analysis providing support to the growing body of evidence that we know about dietary fiber and cardiovascular health. And the two other studies, study 2 and 3 here in the middle from molecular bioscience and circulation research, are about this emerging research. What do we know? We know that dietary fiber intake is related to cardiovascular health. We also know, what's new is that research is needed to understand how this happens, but dietary fiber modulates the gut microbiota. Short-chain fatty acids are metabolites of dietary fibers and resistant starches that are fermented in the gut. And we know that short-chain fatty acids produce different chemical compounds and are factors that may be important for cardiovascular health. So you'll start hearing a whole new list of compounds that we'll have to learn at some point. I won't bring up some of them now, but just know that this is emerging research, that relationship, a next level of research on fiber and cardiovascular health. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't take it from the nutrient to the food. So the food, sources of fiber, foods containing fiber. There's research looking at foods containing fiber and the impact of cardiovascular disease. I'm highlighting just 2 studies today. One is looking at avocado consumption, a prospective study of over 110,000 participants followed for 30 years. So it's a pretty significant reason to share this study today. Found that eating 1 or more avocados weekly, so now we're not looking at habitual diet, 1 avocado a day, more than 1 weekly, had a relationship to decrease cardiovascular disease when it was replacing half a serving daily of margarine, butter, egg, yogurt, cheese, and processed meat. So it's looking at a swap and replacement and a daily, weekly habit of increasing avocados in the diet. We know that avocados are a good source of fiber, and we also know that they're a good source of healthy fats that have been associated and may play a role also in the mechanisms of cardiovascular disease risk reduction. The second study here provides evidence for both unsaturated fat and fiber. So this is where we're starting to see a little bit of overlap, and that's why I had a little Venn diagram there where things overlap, because it's much more complicated than just trying to tease out single nutrients, as we all know. This study was a systematic review and meta-analysis evaluating the evidence on the effects of foods, a variety of foods, fresh avocado, flaxseed, almonds, walnuts, whole grain foods, and tomatoes, on LDL cholesterol levels. And they found that the foods high in the unsaturated fats and low in the saturated fats and high in soluble fiber could support reductions in the LDL cholesterol. So again, foods and a category of food that are high in these nutrients and reflect this. With all these research studies, again, let's consider the limitations. So I am presenting a little differently than when I was presenting the other day. I'm presenting research, so I'm trying to model what I hope we will do in public speaking increasingly. We want to point out the limitations and not be afraid of them. Every study has limitations. Every study has strengths. And the more that you're transparent with that information, the more authentic you can be in communicating what the evidence does and does not say. This study means that it's a systematic review. So it relies on the work of others. So think about that for just a second. So the researchers are relying on the research of others. That inherently has some limitations, right? They probably don't know those researchers. They might call them up and say, hey, can you tell me more? But they're usually evaluating the research that's been done. And certainly future studies are needed to further investigate, because one study, even one systematic review is not enough. And that's why sometimes you'll see one year and another one, it looks like almost the same title, and you're like, Well, I thought they did that systematic review last year, but maybe a really important study came out this year that like throws the numbers a little bit, and we look at it and we continue to evaluate in science. And we always want to remember that one study can't be generalized to all populations. But I think that this does pretty much suggest and sort of validate that nutrient-dense diets, high-quality diets that include foods that are high in fiber, high in the unsaturated fats, support cardiovascular health. So what are some of the takeaways from all of this? Healthy eating pattern that includes fruits and vegetables and other plant foods is associated with reduced risk of cardiovascular disease. Prioritizing unsaturated fats is important for cardiovascular health. Small amounts of saturated fats are okay, and wow, there's some maybe emerging interesting evidence that will be coming down the path on saturated fats and teasing that out with the the matrix of nutrient-dense foods that contain them. Dietary fiber intake is linked to cardiovascular health, as we know, but there may be some new pockets that we're going to be exploring in the gut microbiota and the relationship there. And that foods are what help us meet those recommendations and raise the quality of our diet. So I'm proud to give you this QR code here, and if you don't want it now, it'll be out on the table. One thing that I always would like from people like myself when presenting is like, could you just boil it down to a page for me so that I have the latest research? Could you give me the summary? And I'm happy to have your handouts, and I'll look at them at some point in the future, maybe. But could you just give me the drill down? So this is your one-pager. This is what it looks like. Has all the studies I just reviewed. It summarizes them neat and tidy at the top. Happy to give you more detail. Happy to provide you the research so you can look at it. Be my guest. I love people who read research. But please, this is something that is, from the heart and my brain. This is what I would want if I was listening to someone else's presentation. This is your one-pager in a nutshell on the research highlights for today. Everyone get the snapshots that you need to get for the moment? I'll make it available again later. Okay, so now I want to revisit some of the social media conversations we touched on in the beginning of the presentation, use them as examples of how we can address these with clients and patients in the context of heart health counseling. As a reminder of sorts, I'm simply using these as examples. I mean, there are so many trending conversations right now, we certainly can't cover them all. And I'm keeping heart health as front of mind, so there's others like intermittent fasting, just as important. In the context of cardiovascular health, I haven't seen that as relevant, so I didn't choose it today. But we certainly could take what I'm about to show you and hopefully walk you through into whatever buzz you're hearing. Okay, well, this is it. Before we get into tips and how to handle and address this, let's think of how to get our message across. Let's think of how to be empathetic. Let's think of who we are as, caring individuals, as health professionals. I created this fun acronym, AVO, AVO, but it really came from not inventing the acronym. I stated what my process is and what the flow is and a tool, and this literally emerged. So I'm going to introduce this to you. First, we want to acknowledge their knowledge, and we'll talk about that. When someone comes to you with information, they're being vulnerable. Especially from some of the other talks that we've heard, leading up to today here. About shaming, about feeling insecure in front of dietitians, about feeling judged or the food police. We don't even feel like those people, do we? I mean, I don't associate with that, but I know that some people come there. So if they've opened their mouth to me, they're being like sometimes vulnerable, especially if they're saying things that they're like, is this true? Or I heard that. So acknowledge their knowledge. Then we'll validate with evidence, because who are we? We're nutrition experts who lean into the evidence, and we know it. We know this evidence. And if we don't know it, we know where to find it, and we know how to vet it, and we know what not to generalize, but how to apply it and translate it. And then we offer tips and action items. We're the people who can make it happen. When we can make it happen on the plate. We can make it happen in the grocery store. We can make it happen into the mouth and into the digestion and into the good health. So we acknowledge their knowledge, we validate with evidence, and then we operationalize into practices. So here's the buzz. Seed oils are often attributed to negative health effects due to their prominence in highly processed foods. So sometimes, I think of, is what we're talking about a proxy for something else? And I would say that I think that seed oils sometimes are demonized because they're a proxy for, a packaged processed food, because that's where you see them prominently, But if you're cooking with them, if you're taking them home and cooking with them and home cooking with them, is that a different thing than being into a food that may be consumed a little, which might be called moderation, or a lot in someone's diet? So the buzz. And how many of you have heard about, seed oils are toxic, or, they're bad, you shouldn't eat them, it's and if you attended some of the lectures here today, or this week, you saw some examples of that on social media, and some of the great dietitians who are going after it, which I'm psyched about as well. But we know, what do we know? Well, the science says that replacing saturated fats with unsaturated fats, including the omega-6 fats, they're essential fats, people. I mean, let's step back for a second. The seed oils, omega-6 fats, they're called essential fats. Like, we don't manufacture them in the body. And there is a lot of evidence that they're cardioprotective. And if you want some papers, I can give you some papers. So are we eating too many? Perhaps. Or maybe are we not eating enough of the other omega-3s and essential oils? Maybe that's more of the story. But whatever the story is, omega-6s, there's a lot of research that shows that they're cardioprotective, actually. So this is actually an opportunity to completely disband it. But we want to do it tenderly, because people are coming in and trying to change their diet. And maybe they're trying to, upgrade or improve their overall diet. And we have an opportunity to step in and help them tease this out. So how can this conversation go? If we use the AVO, this conversation could be like, I see why you have questions about this. One, it's really confusing and it's all over the media. But have you heard, I like using and instead of but when at all possible, by the way. That's a take-home tip that I learned outside of nutrition. And there are good times to use the word but anytime you can flip a but to an and, it'll be another take-home for today. Oh, this is bonus if you haven't heard that before. Try it out. Flip your next but to an and, see what happens with the world. It will open up. I see why you have questions. And did you know, or let's remind ourselves that unsaturated fats are beneficial for our heart. And you know what? Some of those cooking oils, those seed oils, are unsaturated fats. They're liquid at room temperature, remember? Even the basics. That's how we learned it way back in the day. And then validate with evidence. Like I said before, there's a strong body of evidence. And actually, some dietitians have come to me and forgotten that there's evidence on the omega-6s for cardiovascular health. There's a really important paper that started in 2009, and then several since that time. And this 2009 paper came out and sort of level set us all on and it wasn't like seed oils aren't bad. It wasn't a media buzz story. It was our omega-6s are cardioprotective. They help reduce the risk of heart disease. Validate the evidence, and then maybe look at the cooking oils that are in the pantry. Suggest and show where they are. Talk about how cooking oils, nuts, seeds, seafood, and avocado are important for heart health, and that there's evidence to show that. And then what do you offer? What are your tips and action items? Maybe say, what are you using in your kitchen at home? What's in your pantry? Let's talk about those specifically. Or what are some sources? Let's identify the sources that we're a little bit afraid of and see if they're even in your diet. So many times people will bring buzz to me and I'm like, yeah, those seem scary. I don't think you've mentioned one thing in an hour that has that item that you're afraid of, in your diet. I haven't found it yet. So maybe we can, sort of have fun talking about, how this pertains to me. I mean, people really love to have it pertain to them, right? Individualized, so make it pertain to them. So what are some of the sources? And think about balance and overall health. Overall balance is important to the diet. Where do they feature in the diet? To what degree? What are some of your favorite sources of unsaturated fats? And if indeed it looks like there might be a balance issue, maybe you can make some delicious suggestions on how they can get more delicious unsaturated fats in their diet. Next, this one, the carnivore diet. And I'm not here to malign these per se. I'm just sort of to highlight the buzz. But I have to say, this just goes against the grain. Whew. I had to say that. That one I just really wanted to land, you know. I'm not a comedian, but I thought that was a pretty good one. Couldn't resist that. Okay, goes against grain. We are seeing a lot of conversation about this. Why? Shirley Temple again. Protein will always be like, whoa, it's a new protein diet. This is so cool. And there's buzz about it being good for weight or blood sugar or even inflammation, which is like a little surprising that the association there is being like attempted. But when we look at the science, not only is this diet under-researched, so you can start there, you can say, just under-researched. The whole carnivore diet really isn't like a thing that I've heard named in the science. I'm not aware of any studies that have looked at the carnivore diet yet. You know, you can be even optimistic. Perhaps it will come. And it prioritizes some foods that have shown in some research, so you can look at that. It prioritizes some foods that are high in saturated fat, so maybe we need to look at diet quality. But importantly, it restricts some foods that we know are important for heart health. So it could set us at a deficit for fruits and vegetables or fiber sources if we inadvertently start shifting too far one way on any diet. So what does the science say? It's under research, and it conflicts with the evidence base. I mean, it does conflict. We can say that sort of neutrally. You know, that's just to date, that's what it shows. But I see you're interested in this. And so how do we avo that? We can imagine that a lot may gravitate toward this. Well, maybe we can point out, you know what, there's a lot of plant foods with proteins in them. So that's an opportunity. Some people still don't really realize that. I mean, we know that, so we feel like everyone should know that by now. But we have a lot of education to do on plant-based sources of protein still that may also carry fiber and other phytonutrients along with them. And we can say it's true. Yes, protein's super important for immune system, enzymes, you know, you can name them. It's super important. Did you know that most of us are getting enough? But let's look at your diet. Let's look at your diet and see how you're doing. And let's see if we need to identify some places where you need some more protein, if that's what the conversation is evolving to. So we validate that the plant-forward diet, which can include meat and plant sources, it can be one or the other, it can be a combination, and it's individualized. We can validate the evidence by saying dietary fiber is important for heart health, so let's find places to look for that since it looks like the carnivore diet may be lower in that nutrient. And we can offer some tips and actions by sharing where protein exists in the diet in both plant and animal sources. We might even construct some meals for them, which a lot of us are very good at. You know, one of my favorite things is, you know, if someone's like, I love my burger, and you like say, well, you know, a portobello mushroom can, you know, just be a perfectly nice alternative instead of a burger. You know, I like that, but like someone who's just eating a burger, they're sort of like, yeah, that's not really, you know, that's not to me a burger. And maybe you don't want to send them to one of the other, you know, burger alternatives that are made in the plant world right now. But maybe they add some mushrooms to the burger. Maybe they add some avocado on the burger. Maybe they add walnuts chopped into the burger, or some of these other great ways that you can eat your burger and, you know, boost the other either plant-based protein, the fiber, the umami, all of those factors into the existing food, or layer it on. Okay, next, the social conversation. This has been around a while, so you might be surprised that I put it up here, but it's sort of like been bubbling, so I decided to carry it forward today about greens powders. And I think it's just sort of like around, you know, there's more out there, more brands, more opportunities. And, you know, greens powders, depending on what's in them, you know, they can be really interesting, you know, but they're a supplement. And I think the key is here is sort of educating around, and this is an opportunity, that, you know, for me, if someone comes in, they're like, I like this, and I get this a lot, the greens powder, they're like, it's got, you know, and I'm not going to name all my label criteria on the front, like it's got this, it doesn't have this, it's got this, it's got this, I love it, can I take it? And I'm like, I see you're interested in fruits and vegetables. Yeah, let's see, you know, where your fruits and vegetables are in your diet, you know, and sure, you know, let's look at that also, and maybe that would be, you know, fill some nutritional gaps. But did you know that the research really is on fruits and vegetables? And there is a little bit of research on some of the greens powders. You know, there is a little bit. But there's more evidence on heart health in fruits and vegetables. And while there's room for supplements, and maybe they will help cover the gaps, and maybe just like it, which is cool, let's remember that they'll never make up for a poor diet. So let's talk about your diet, and let's talk about that at the same time. And let's talk about this cool buzz and this new brand you found, and where it might fit and some cool ways to put that in. So I just, with that one, it's an opportunity to say, yeah, fruits and vegetables are good. I see what you're looking at, and maybe reframing them. They're like, oh, I did. Because sometimes we can influence them that way. Yes, I did. Yes, yes, I did say that. You are a smart individual that you're looking for that. The links, the fiber also, and maybe one of your tips is let's look at the label. Maybe that's how mundane it is to teach label reading for some. Let's look at the label. So you're looking for the right stuff. Is there fiber? Are there suspicious ingredients that you do or don't want in there? What should we look for? And let's remember it's a supplement, and it's an opportunity to educate. And finally, I want to include this one. Yes, we're sponsored by Fresh Avocados, love one today, and I love that, but this literally has been bubbling in my sphere, and it's an interesting one. Have any of you seen the storage hack to store avocados in water? Yeah, it's making the rounds. This is sort of clever, seemingly reasonable even. It's sort of like, oh, and maybe you even checked yourself like, oh, maybe I have a new way to do this even. I wonder. And a lot of people did. It's an opportunity. And how does this relate to heart health? Well, this relates to heart health in a favorite way for me. In order to bridge people into eating foods that are good for their heart, food safety is always in the back. We want safe food to be eaten. We all are committed to it as dietitians. We all want a safe food supply, and we know and we teach food safety. But sometimes on the one-on-one conversations, we're giving tips where you buy it, how you use it, and all that. This is a very clear food safety issue. So much so that avocados or any fruit that are submerged in water, Mother Nature has a plan. It always has little human microorganisms. Do you remember microbiology? Did it freak you out everywhere around you with microbiology? I'd walk around, I'd be like, don't touch anything. And I'm like, oh no, they're in the air also. They were everywhere. They're everywhere. There's normal, non-pathological, normal levels on foods. When you submerge them in water, fruit, avocado, or otherwise, some of the human pathogens like Listeria and Salmonella can multiply. So much so, this became important enough, and this is really recent buzz. The FDA came out with a statement that said, don't do that. The FDA decided, to come, I need to make a statement about this. This is not the way to store avocados. I just want to share one little piece here. I have a chef friend, very well known. I'm not going to name her right now, but she thought it was a cool thing too. She's really well known. She's been places. You maybe have seen her. She did a little video, an Instagram reel about storing avocados in water. She's like, who knew? This is amazing. The greatest thing that I saw her do is a few days later, she came back and she did another one. She said, I was wrong. She corrected it. Sometimes things live in social media forever. And she came back, she said, I didn't know. I was wrong. I want to tell you I was wrong. I've got to right this wrong because I didn't realize that I had made a mistake. And here's what I learned. And I thought that was the most human, smart thing to do. She didn't do it as a press move. She's a real person. And it was really, really smart that she did that. So how do you store avocados? How do you avo this? How do you improve, if we have research that shows that avocados are rich in fiber and you can incorporate them in your diet and they have all these benefits, well, we certainly want to eat them safely. So here's the conversation. I'm so glad you brought this up because food safety is such an important issue. And it's an aspect of our nutrition, our health every day that sometimes goes unchecked or we don't think about it and address it. It's so good that you're asking about this. And it's so good that you're eating avocados because they're so delicious and healthy. And here's some evidence. Avocados are heart healthy. However, this storage hack could put you at risk. That's serious. I don't want you to be sick, but I want you to be healthy. So the evidence, storing them, any fruit can allow these pathogens to grow. And avocados are too nutritious to allow that to happen. So what do? The best way to store leftover avocados, anyone? Lemon juice, yep, that's a great way. Other ways? Pit-in, I heard like plastic wrap or something. Someone, yeah, plastic wrap. You know, like pushing to the surface. I like to sort of secure it to the surface because it's all about surface area and oxidation. Yes?
There's an avocado saver that you can, it pretty much seals onto the pit and onto the entire surface and wraps the sides.
Okay.
It doesn't matter the size, it's 2 sizes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. So the idea being, you know, not submerging in water so the pathogens can multiply, you know, trying to come close so that there's less oxygen, you know, being exposed. I love the lemon juice, orange juice, any of those solutions. Leaving the pit in also is just covering more of the surface. It's not like magic. I mean, it seems like magic, but it's covering more of the surface. And I love the lemon juice because that's actually seeing antioxidation happen. I use that with apples also. You know, if you ever want to show someone, like, what's an antioxidant? It's like, well, let me show you oxidation happen, you know, and you can show it something brown, and you can show antioxidation. You can't reverse it, interestingly, though, right? So once something's brown and you're like, I'm going to now do the antioxidant thing, it doesn't go back. That's why we need to eat fruits and vegetables every day, at least 3 times a day. You know, it's not like once a year you go to the spa and you get all your fix of fruits and vegetables that week, and then you go home and you oxidize the rest of the year. Exaggeration, but you know. Anyway, it's about balance. And then you build in the ways to incorporate that avocado once you've taught about safe storage and how great it is, how they can ripen. You have an opportunity to say, yeah, let's explore how to use them. Like this delicious smoothie today. How did you guys love it? I've had a couple. Super fresh, delicious. Greens, you know, you can taste that greens in it from real greens. All kinds of, you can taste the avocado. We had it in our muffin today. We had it in the crema with the grits. You know, you build in tips and how easy it is to incorporate at morning, noon, and night. Let's see, what are your favorite ways to eat avocado? I mean, this is just like off the cuff for a second. Some favorite ways? Guac? Toast, avocado toast, yeah. Part of a smoothie, yeah. Smoothie's a great one too. In a burrito. With a spoon. That's how we eat it in our house. I was telling the team we had dinner last night that I've got a guy. Since the pandemic, someone took it upon themselves to deliver avocados to your home because it was really hard to, you know, get to the grocery, and we were all like, you know, suffering that, like, what do we do now? So I text Alex, and he's like, I got you. And avocados show up on my porch, and then I Venmo. And I've never met the guy, 3 years running. And I get big boxes of avocados delivered on the regular, and we eat it with a spoon. It's probably our #1 way, but we've got a lot of recipes. Pudding, I think, is a really, really awesome way, and a way that you can completely pull the wool over someone's eyes. It's not nice to do that, I think. You know, you tell them later, but it's a really fun way because they're like, this is the most delicious pudding I ever had. And then you're like, it's got avocado. They're like, what? But lots of great ways to enjoy that. Okay, so remembering as we tie things together for the day, hopefully this can be like a flow for you, Avo, and hopefully you'll remember it because here you're sitting with us today. Acknowledge their knowledge. If they come to you to say something, they care. I think that's so awesome when someone cares, even if they've got it, you know, upside down in every which way. Validate with the evidence, lean into it. When it comes to what we've talked today, you'll have your one-sheeter on the evidence for today. And maybe focus on some things like some big buckets like fruits and vegetables, fiber, fat. And what I'd like to do is one of the things that I love to think about is I'm in a room of peers who are like nutrition experts already. And like if I could poll each of you, like the amount of crowdsourcing we could have of amazing information is unbelievable. And so one of the things I wanted to do today was think about this sweet spot in the middle. And it doesn't have to be one food, even though there are a couple one foods that cover them all. But where can you get a fruit and veggie and more plants, fat and fiber? What would be a go-to meal or snack covering the 3 Fs? In order to do that, here is a poll, and I want you to shoot your cameras up at this, your phones, and take it, and we'll bring you into a poll. It's an open-ended question. You can put a phrase, you can put a word, you can put a sentence, and I want you to put in, give me a go-to meal or snack that covers the 3 Fs. So what would cover the fiber? It'd be a fruit or vegetable, and some fat. Apple and peanut butter, first one up. Nuts, trail mix, avocado egg salad, tacos. Tacos double, look at this. I love doing, oh, this is so fun. And we'll capture this and we'll source it out to you. So hopefully this will give us some great thought points for all of us together. Avocado toast, another apple and peanut butter. Hummus and carrots, a grain bowl. Look how many options we have. Keep them coming. This is so cool. I love this. Smoothies. I see a chia parfait, strawberry guacamole. Oh, that's cool. A Jamaican bowl meal. Graham cracks. Hummus. Fantastic. Look at where we're coming. I love doing this. So this is a way for us to capture all of our shared thoughts on the topic. I'm going to take a screenshot while I can, and we will provide this out to you. All right, what do you all think? Yay for us. Great job. I've got more coming in here. I'll wait just a couple more seconds. I'm going to give the 10-second countdown. 10, 9. This is for my daughter when she's getting ready for bed. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. Look at all these nice options that we can cover all 3 of those through delicious, simple snacks and meals. Okay, so finally, I want to point your attention just briefly to some great resources from our session sponsor, Fresh Avocados, Love One Today, Saborea Uno Hoy, and our Breakfast Nourishment Champions, because I always like to be well-fueled going into the day. If you're looking for some heart health resources, Love One Today has a bunch of different things, some downloadable meal plans, a recipe book. The whole recipe book is all heart check mark certified. So you have that for you. And their team, as well as myself, their team is always happy to assist helping you identify certain resources, making things available that can help encourage the health of our clients and patients. And with that, I'd simply like to say it's been a delicious pleasure to be with you over breakfast, and thanks a bazillion.